I'm not always sure why I like having so many options in the games that I like. In Warframe or in any game with lots of options, it's just not clear to me when I choose things in these games whether the fun I'm having is coming from me or more from the game. Here's an example. I personally really like this secondary grenade weapon, the Agrit. By the way, what a glorious name, right? The Agrit. Ooh. Anyway, you can see it has a huge area of effect, but you have to manually detonate it, which I find really satisfying. You throw it out, time it just right, and it feels very direct. To me, it's fun to use. It provides good feedback. That is why I like it. Sure, that's clear enough, and that's because of how it works in the game. I didn't add that fun myself, it has something to do with my preferences. But, at least in Warframe, you're invited to use this secondary weapon with a variety of other options, at which point the line between what's fun because of the game and what's fun because of my approach to the game becomes a little blurred. This thing I'm using now is a powerful weapon with some punch through to deal with enemies in a line, but it is very ammo hungry, it can run out quick. So I like using it with this Warframe, this is Necros, because of the Desecrate ability, which creates extra loot from enemy corpses. Now that's good anyway if you need a particular material, but the thing is that ammo is also loot, so you can also fuel ammo-hungry weapons more easily. And it turns out that the Agrit has a very small ammo reserve. You can't hold much ammo, so getting some back more often helps too, even though it isn't maybe as ammo inefficient. Now, Desecrate is a good example of what I meant before. The ability to make more loot, of course it's in Warframe, there's lots of stuff dropping. Obviously using that ability to get more items is a thing about the game. I didn't introduce that. That's not me. And just because I don't know what about a game is making me enjoy something doesn't mean that it's me. It could just be a quality of the game the developers put in, curated very carefully, and I simply am ignorant of its presence. But the idea that it's an ammo efficiency ability, I don't know, that feels a little bit less like the game and a little bit more just how I think of it. That really ammo-hungry weapon from before, that was the Kuvacomb here. And that feels very much like the game deciding this weapon has synergy with things that give you more ammo, right? The weapon just uses a lot of ammo when it does damage. The comb is a mechanic where you start using more and more ammo to get more and more damage, so to ramp up its damage potential, you have to dump a ton of ammo into it. That's very much the game. But what about these, the Agrit from before? These explosives can be pretty efficient at killing a lot of enemies at once with only a few rounds of ammunition. So when I've focused on keeping my magazine full, if that's what you call a bunch of these grenades, I usually don't have too much trouble. I just don't want to take the care to do that a lot of time. That feels a lot more like me saying maybe this is a weapon that benefits from ammo efficiency. You could say that the comb is more the game's idea in this loadout, while the Agrit is more of my addition. Or you could debate whether you feel like Desecrate is really an ability that makes more loot at all. Is Desecrate an energy generating ability just because you can combo it with Equilibrium and Despoil to make it generate a lot of energy? Now, of course, this is not generally how you can formulate a useful answer to a question. The answer to those questions is a little bit yes and a little bit no, or more like it goes beyond those individual things. It's both and maybe more things mixed together. I think the whole process I've been describing to you is most widely called making a build, and naturally it's not at all limited to Warframe. It is my passion in many games, and the topic of this channel. I'm Xandy, by the way. Welcome aboard. But what about all these processes makes them builds? What was it about the games, or me, that made the games games with meaningful build systems? It kind of seems like the build part was just me organizing things with certain philosophies. Okay, so what qualities of a game make it fun or good to do that in that game? If that seems like kind of an important topic to cover for a channel about whatever a build is, yeah, here we are. You might at this point be asking, that's all very weird, but why does it even matter? You may feel like you know quite definitively when something is a build or feels like making a build to you. So what if we don't have a great understanding of the exact mechanics of that phenomenon, so you may think. But without a definition in hand, which we both understand, one thing we can't do is effectively recommend things to each other, because, for example, saying a game has good build systems means very little if we only understand that in our own personal and intuitive ways. And a definition of what a build is would be better if it wasn't strict, because this is an abstract concept or feeling, and it seems to be a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, Strictly defining happiness wouldn't be very useful. It's more helpful to have a group of ideas that feel like they correlate with happiness to lots of people. Different things make different people happy, but they aren't totally unrelated. So if something is a lot of things from that group of ideas, it's then more useful to say it might make you happy. And playing games with good build systems would make me very happy, but I don't have time to try them all, and reviews of games rarely do a good job describing the merits of a game's build systems. There are a few different reasons for that. It takes a long time to evaluate that part of a game. Many industry pressures encourage reviewers to get their reviews up early or first. Taking Warframe as an example, some games may not have a single definitive release date, or their build systems change a lot long after most reviews. Not everyone is interested in making builds, whatever that is. In many cases, you'd be delaying the review for a relatively narrow aspect of the game. And furthermore, I don't feel that what makes a game's build systems good is even very well understood in the first place. Gee, sure would be nice if I had created 3 YouTube channels and a Twitch channel supported by a Patreon account and had a lovely community full of build-making, highly eloquent people for the exact purpose of solving this problem. Oh wait, let's get cracking, folks. Here's the plan for what I'm calling the Build Word Cloud project. For phase 1, I need your thoughts about builds, and I think what I can do to help is to demonstrate lots of build systems and make lots of builds in quick succession to get your brain juices flowing. Our goal in this first phase is to help you pick out what seems fun or unrelated to your interests in this subject so you can tell me. Just in the comments is fine. These sorts of comments you folks already tend to leave are perfect for this. And these are, of course, meant to be entertaining normal videos as well, so I hope it'll be fun for you to see a little selection of build systems I like and why I like them. Phase 2 will be a survey, where you'll get to rate a bunch of terms pulled from all of your comments in Phase 1. In this survey, you'll tell me how much those terms feel related to making builds to you. Not exactly rocket science, and then in Phase 3, something, the results of that survey will be a usable definition of what a build is. A bunch of terms with relative weights, which correspond with the feeling of making a build, at least to us. You know, a word cloud, these things, maybe, but well, this one is okay, but yeah, like this. More details about the later phases later. For now, good talk, and this video is part of Phase 1 as well, so let me have it. I look forward to reading what you write. For our purposes, I think Warframe is a rather extreme example in that there's a ton of variety and many decision points, but that's combined with a very low opportunity cost. That's the kind of term I'll be talking about in that Phase 2 video, but for now we need a working definition of it. So, opportunity cost. For this video, let's say opportunity cost is the pressure placed on a choice in a game by the other choices you could have made, or the value a choice is given by the other choices available. I say Warframe has very low opportunity cost, generally anyway, because most missions don't ask you to have too much utility. You don't need to be able to do much, just stay alive and do damage. And you have a lot of ways to get the general things you often need, like energy. It isn't usually very much of a trade-off to add a way to restore a ton of energy to your loadout, because for one thing, there are a lot of different things that do that, and they often take up different slots. So wherever you have space free, you could just slot something in. There are also just so many different slots a thing could take up. You got 3 weapon slots, your Warframe of course. Then there's your focus school, the Helminth ability you've added to your frame. Can't forget about Incarnon shards. Okay, those were Archon shards, but Incarnon adapters, those 2, that's not even to get into all the granular things. You've got all these places to add these major things to your loadout, and you just don't need that many by default. Of course, that's only one reason. Another reason for that low opportunity cost is that across those different slots, there often aren't too many options competing for that space. So you don't lose much by filling any given space, both because you have many more spaces, and because that space isn't often doing something unique. You don't have to use that space for it very often. You could, if you wanted, give Warframe more opportunity cost a lot of ways, by adding more things the player could need to be able to do in missions, by reducing the number of slots available to get those things, by making more useful things only available through a limited number of slots, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm making an effort to present this as a neutral thing, even though it's not my preference, because this could be a great, terrible, or mostly irrelevant thing, depending on the player. You could imagine a type of player that really just wants to use whatever they want, and then maybe it's not as desirable to them for the game to be more difficult. I would say that opportunity cost correlates with relative difficulty, but only in the sense that you've got to have a better idea or your build is a little bit more demanded of. On the other hand, even higher difficulty would restrict options in a different way. Like right now, two nearly identical weapons, which both do incredible damage, will be functionally the same in Warframe, even if one does maybe 5% more damage. There just aren't really situations in this game where that really accomplishes much, outside of maybe speedrunning challenges designed by the player. You could, though, imagine a boss with an enrage timer. After such and such an amount of time, they become much stronger and quickly kill you over and over, or you lose the mission immediately. Depending on how aggressively that timer is tuned, it could absolutely matter quite a bit if a weapon does 5% more damage than another. There are plenty of games where that does matter, and it's because they're balanced differently. Of course, there are game design solutions to these problems. For my weaker weapon example before, you could produce systems for most or all weapons to progress in power, so whatever the player wants to use will have a path to big damage. In Warframe, we have Incarnon-Genesis adapters and ribbons, which tend to favor weaker weapons. The trick is that it's there to help weapons feel more equal, so it's meant to benefit weaker weapons more. And for my harder, like enrage timer example, you could make a difficult fight that doesn't overly reward slightly higher damage by capping how much damage a boss can take over a unit of time. Then it'd be about finding enough moments to fit damage in while surviving the fight. You'd likely make the physical demand on the player higher in that case. They'd have to dodge more or move fast, and that would be more of the challenge. But if the player did choose to bring a super powerful weapon and a highly durable build to match, they could probably win without as much physical prowess, and the risk there is that the fight might feel like waiting around. You'd have to have a really engaging boss fight for that to be fun. In a way, I feel like Warframe can feel like that, for better or worse, in that it's not too hard to do enough damage if you have fully built weapons and Warframes. In many missions, there are just hordes of enemies coming at you that you will attain the ability to kill almost immediately. So the only meaningful decision left is how you'd like to get that damage, which I suppose that does embrace a certain kind of choice. You aren't encouraged to do much else besides choose what you like. Some players may feel like it just isn't worth the energy to create an interesting build that doesn't give them much practical benefit if there's a simpler way of doing things, while others might revel in the opportunity to kill everything however they want or in many different ways. I personally feel a little bit of both. Warframe's relationship with opportunity cost has influenced me a lot. Discussing builds in Warframe specifically allows for a lot of reasonable approaches to a similar idea, but not always a lot of meaningfully different ideas. Put another way, if I had you all submit builds for, let's say, Necros, we'd see a ton of things that are technically different, but which are not really fundamentally different builds in their focus. In some other games, I think we would see relatively fewer technically different things, but a greater number of actually different builds. And that's not necessarily good or bad. By the way, this isn't a dig at, I feel like the stream audience might feel a bit called out right now. Like, no, that's been great, of course. Warframe then serves as a great example, because there are so many options, and yet I think there are surprisingly few meaningfully different builds. But how you evaluate the process of making builds that Warframe provides is going to be more personal. In one other sense, the opportunity cost of Warframe is pretty low, and that's in the sense that it's strange. I don't think we'd easily find many other games quite like this one, which is the whole challenge here. This aspect of game design is a whole bunch of ingredients that result in a unique flavor of a familiar phenomenon. I hope you enjoyed this build-making flavor with me. Please look forward to the rest of the Build Word Cloud project, and have a good one.